Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be a great episode, especially if you've been touched like me. I've been touched with a traumatic brain injury. I lost a couple of my family members to Alzheimer's. My mother's in dementia right now, and this podcast is going to really talk about how to help yourself, but we're also going to talk about how to be a caregiver and to be able to understand a little bit more. And I just wanted to say thank you, Vicki. Your book helped me get through the passing of my aunt Sarah, and her sponsor. The sponsor of the show is actually my cousin Andrea, and that's her mom. And so, guys, if you know anybody struggling with dementia, Alzheimer's, memory care, this is going to be the episode for you. Like I said, Vicki has written one. I've read over 6,000 books, and her books has to be in my top 10 of all time. And the one book that I love was Love Remembers. So guys, after the show, make sure you pick up a copy of Love Remembers. It touched my heart and it touched my soul. So Vicki, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks for your compliment. I'm so glad that you loved the book and that it was able to be a companion for you while you were dealing with your aunt, and that there's information in there that can help you and help anybody who's struggling with memory, or even if people aren't struggling with memory, it's good exercise for the brain.
And I also want to thank Angel for putting us together, doing such an amazing job. So I just want to say thank you. So my first question is, I just can't believe I'm going to say this, but you've been in a couple car accidents, so I know not to drive with you. But what is your definition?
I haven't had anything for 2 years. I drive and I'm like, okay, but I pray every time I get in the car.
So what is your definition of resiliency?
Well, I'm blessed because my genetics, I did that 23andMe, and my genetics is 98% Russian athlete. So I'm very blessed with genes that will help me recover and rebuild. So I think resiliency is when you are flattened in bed and you don't have a brain and you're thinking about, oh my God, where's the future of my life? And then you just kind of picture, well, where do I want to be and what do I still want to do and what's really important for me to hold on to? And then you just, for me, then I said, well, the first time I got hit really badly, I was in a car accident in 1981, and that I was in the middle of producing the audio tape. So I got a lot of help and had somebody drive me to the studio. I laid down while I was in the studio coaching the narrator, and got through it because I felt it was too important to get these memory techniques on audio tape and to be able to make it available for people to listen to and use and be able to improve their brain function. And that was early on in my career with the memory thing. But the second time I was in a really big, severe accident where a big rig truck smashed me in an AMC Eagle. If I wasn't in that AMC Eagle, I don't think I'd still be here. But thank God I was in an armored tank. It still totaled the car. But I remember laying in bed and thinking, I have 6 more months of grad school. I'd finished 1.5 years of it. I have patients and clients right now that I'm getting my hours toward being a marriage family therapist. And my brain's not working. I'm scared to drive, and I can't really think clearly. And what can I do? And so I just started visualizing myself graduating on time. I had enough knowledge to know that brain vitamins would make a big difference. So, and then I read this book by Daniel Amen called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And I was able to pinpoint what was wrong with me, because at the time, 20 years ago, I went to UCLA and the doctors just couldn't help me. They actually made fun of me. They're like, "You're too focused on this." And I said, "Look, I've got future patients." And then my brother said something wonderful. And he said, "You've only known yourself with a good brain. You're going to be a better healer and a better clinician now that you know what it's like to have an injured brain, and then what it takes to be able to improve. So keep a journal and just know this is your recovery is part of your future practice. And it's all good." And so with that, I got out of bed and I started going to Bikram yoga, because I had read that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was able to continue his basketball and recover from his injuries with Bikram yoga. So I started going about 3 days a week. I was doing my own memory training, but I had to go slower than normal. And brain vitamins, walking, and then just giving myself self-talk of, I'm going to get through this. I've got all the techniques I need. It's just going to take time. And I have a purpose. I still have a purpose. So I came through it. I'm so grateful. And I had people really patient with me. And when I was seeing clients, I told them, I said, "I've had an accident. I can't remember anything. I'm a memory expert who can't remember anything. Do you mind if we record the sessions? And then I'll have them transcribed and take it to my supervisor." And I was able to do it. And I know it was my will. It was my will. It was also that I felt that I had a calling, and it was too important to me. It was just too important to me to be complacent and to give in to the status quo. And then I met a 85-year-old neuroengineer, a man named Dr. Harold Tuman, who's since passed away. And I went to him for biofeedback. And he said, "Vicki, you developed this incredible memory from practicing and teaching your memory system for 18 years. You need to be teaching your memory system. That's the thing that's going to help you get your abilities back. And you're slow, and old people are slow. So go find some old people and teach them your memory system, and that's going to be your recovery." And within 2 days, I found out that Los Angeles Unified School District had an adult school, and they had a memory program. And so I called the guy up and I was like, me. I have a program. I can do this. I can do this. Can I do this through your program? And he said, "Come on down." And I didn't tell him, I was injured. I just said, I have this whole program and I would love to do this. And I've done it before. And so he said, "Well, we only have 2 classes right now." It was July of 2001, I think. So it was a couple of years that I was still a little bit in the dark and just kind of doing the best I could. And it just worked out. And then they built upon them itself. So in July, I was teaching 2 classes. By December, I was teaching 9. And then I was able to stay for 2.5 years teaching about 20 hours a week in 6 different assisted living facilities. And during that time, none of the people I'd worked with declined. A nurse even pointed that out. She said, "Vicki, none of them have declined mentally. Some of them have gone down physically, but not mentally while you've been working with them." And I got better. And then I was able to go back and teach day school again, be a school teacher again, and make a living again.
Now, one of the reasons I wanted to have you come on, because ever since 2014, I think it was yesterday or the day before, was when Robin Williams took his life, because he was struggling with some of the stuff that even Bruce Willis is struggling with. Wendy Williams is struggling. So it's become a hot button issue right now. It used to be everybody would joke around, oh, that's the old timers disease, but now people are living longer, but their bodies are living longer. But a lot of people expect their minds not to be living longer. And I think if the body's going to live longer, if we do the right things for our mind's going to be stronger for longer. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that, I've any kind of memory methods that you're going to use are going to improve and strengthen the mind. And I have done my own research in different memory methods. The one that I use, I find, is the easiest and the most powerful. But there's some memory experts that are still around that are in their 80s now that, were in their 40s when I was in my 20s when I first started. And none of the memory experts have any kind of dementia. So that really tells you that when you're exercising your brain and it's increasing the neural branch growth in your brain, that you're going to have a healthier longevity. When it comes to Bruce Willis and Wendy Williams, I just wrote an article that Angel got out and just this week did a press release on it. Bruce Willis, when he was in those Die Hard movies, he got injured. He had a lot of concussions. And then Matthew Perry wrote in his book that the two of them, would drink each other under the table from time to time. So when you have a combination of alcohol and brain injury, it's going to cause damage in the brain. So I feel like if someone who's listening knows Bruce Willis, if they could, get me the information, I can send them the article and be able to help with memory training techniques so that, not all of the brain is injured. We've got 100% of the brain, and they say we use 10 to 20% of it. So the little neural branches, as you stimulate the brain, work like springtime in a tree. In springtime, you have new branches in the tree. And so our brains work the same way. And it was a false belief system years ago when they said the brain couldn't regenerate. And I knew all along that was not possible. The brain had to be able to regenerate. So, and with Wendy Williams, what I write in my book, Love Remembers, is that when there's a significant loss in somebody's life that's equal to their sense of self and self-esteem, it can cause atrophy in the brain. So I think Wendy Williams, too, now that she's gotten a lot of care and support, a memory training technique would be able to help her, along with a program I have called Passion Quest, where you can create visual pictures and change your life, so she could re-see herself in whatever vision she still has of herself. I know as a kid, she wanted to be on radio and she wanted to be famous, and she'd like to get back to that, but she could probably do something that's still going to give her a strong sense of herself. She had a lot of blows of trust and loss of family and loss of relationship. And when you have a codependent personality and you don't have a way to rebuild yourself with passion and purpose, the brain can go down and atrophy. So in that respect, I feel grief therapy is really important. If someone's depressed, I'm a proponent of antidepressants until they can get themselves back up, because when the brain gets depressed, it starts to atrophy. So the combination of memory training along with nutrients and oxygen, hyperbaric oxygen, can also be a big help in recovering. And also to go to the new type of doctor, there's doctors called functional medicine doctors.
Mhm.
And they've been trained to think outside the box. And there are certain kinds of tests that they can do to find out if you've been exposed to something that's actually inhibiting you from being able to absorb nutrients and be able to utilize it, or if you've been exposed to toxins, pesticides, plastics, gases. There's a company called Great Plains Lab. I always think of Great Plains, I think of the buffalo on the Great
Mhm.
Plains, and that's how I remember it. And they have it's called a frozen urine toxic test. And you have to go to a functional, you can call them, they're in Kansas, and ask in your location where they have an affiliate doctor, and you can get a kit, and then you just after you haven't drunk anything, and then you freeze it and send it off, usually a Monday or Tuesday, to make sure the lab gets it so it's not sitting over a weekend. And it's amazing. It's the only lab in the whole country that will tell you everything that's actually in your body and then what to do to get rid of it. So oftentimes it's taking NAC, NAD, infrared
Yeah.
saunas, glutathione,
Yep.
it's sometimes colonics, detox foot baths. All those things can help the body, because the body can recover. It's amazing. It can recover.
And I was with GNC for over 30 years. So when you talk about NAC and you talk about neurotropics, because I believe in neurotropics. I know Joe Rogan talks about neurotropics by On It. So because I believe you are what you put in your body, and I believe that you can either pollute it or you can give it the nutrients that it actually needs. But like I know that if I want energy, I mean, I came out with my own coffee. I have my own coffee up above. But I know that it's good. But if I have too much of it, I have the opposite effect, to where it's like, wait a minute, I feel foggy if I drink too much coffee. But I know that so I believe that you have to put the right amount of stuff in your body at the right amount of time. So, what are your thoughts on nootropics?
I think that the combination of, well, you want to make sure that you're taking, everyone has a different body. And so you want to make sure that you're taking something that your body's going to be able to absorb. And the other thing is, most people can't tolerate vitamins on an empty stomach.
Yep.
And you want to make
Yes.
sure that, and for brain injury, you want to make sure you're getting high levels of protein. And you want to start out with protein, like have some protein in the morning and then have your coffee. Don't have
Yeah.
your coffee without, excuse me, without
God
protein.
bless you.
Otherwise, it'll spike and then you'll go down. So I think combinations of protein, complex carbohydrates, which are things like rice and quinoa and kasha, healthy things. You don't want to have sugars, regular sugar. You don't want white bread. You don't want donuts. And then I just listened to a talk this morning that if you have to have cookies and cake and donuts, then have it after you've had a protein meal. That way the sugar won't jump you up and bring you down.
And
But
that's something that I learned from
my
you.
diet consists, I love coffee, just love it. So I have mushroom coffee in the morning. I'll take a
Well,
couple bites of a jerk chicken, maybe some cauliflower or something in the morning. And then mid-morning, I'll have a protein shake. And then lunchtime, usually a protein with vegetables. I like cheese. They say not to eat cheese, but I'll have some cheese and crackers in the afternoon, and then a dinner. I eat meat. I'm an O blood type. And then sometimes I get into the popcorn and sugar-free cookies.
well, what I did is, as I started listening to you, and I know we were supposed to get together, I took some of your advice. And now in the morning with my coffee, I actually mix 60 grams of protein in my shake. So I actually have a coffee protein shake in the morning. So I'm kind of getting both, and I'm realizing that I have sustained energy throughout the day, and it's just not that high blood sugar spike and then crashing down. Also,
Yeah,
so,
also that MCT oil is
yes,
fabulous to put in
yeah,
there, and that just makes your little brain hum for about 4 hours straight. It's
yep.
amazing.
And guys, if you don't know what we're talking about, it's called medium chain triglyceride oils. It's normally you can find it any supplement place, and it comes in oil, and you can mix it right into your shakes. And a lot of them taste like coconut. So if you can get a good one, they taste amazing. So
Yeah, brain fuel, I think, at Whole Foods that I like that a lot.
now I never really realized how the brain works until I got a. I'm an old school guy. I found an old audio tape. I mean, an old VHS tape, and I was watching Tony Robbins, "Awaken the Giant Within." And back then, 20 years ago, he was talking about how you can rewire your brain. And a lot of people, when I say, you can rewire your brain, a lot of foo-foo, NLP and stuff like that. But I believe that you can rewire your brain, but you have to really think about it, but then you really have to do it. So talk about how do you go about, like somebody like myself with a traumatic brain injury, how do you go about rewiring the brain?
Well, there's different ways to redo it, like what you're talking about. NLP is one, neuro-linguistic programming, where you take an event that's been traumatic and horrible and you see it in your mind, and then you condense it and you make it smaller and smaller and smaller and kind of put it into the corner. And then you see what you want to see happen in big, elevated light, and see the end. Ideally, instead of just seeing the event, you want to see the end result of the event. So you want to see yourself, fully concentrated, focused, energetic, headache free, pain free, maybe swimming, bicycling, lifting weights, reading with full comprehension, those kinds of things. What helped me the most, really, of everything, because I was a guinea pig for myself, is really this brain sprouts memory system. And when I had a brain injury, well, the way it works is you link information together. So you have one item. You want me to just teach a little bit about the memory system itself?
This is your house. This is you're a guest, so I'm learning as we go. And as you see, I'm writing stuff down. So let's go
Okay.
for it.
All right. So the way the brain works is that if you have something that's visual, that's in motion, and unusual, and you have those three components together, it helps to make an outstanding recall in the brain. And there's actually three types of memory. There's sensory memory, which is fleeting, it's just seconds. So it's like a smell, or you embrace somebody, you feel their warmth, and then after the embrace, it doesn't feel the same. There's short-term memory. Do you remember from reading how long short-term memory is?
I don't remember.
So it's actually short. It's 7 to 30 seconds. Now, if people were taught in school that short-term memory is only 7 to 30 seconds, people wouldn't feel bad if they remembered, read something and had to reread it, or they meet some new person and then they have a conversation and they forgot what their name was. So we don't really have bad short-term memory. We have what's called an untrained memory. And then these memory techniques can change something that's abstract, like a person's name or a concept or an idea, into a tangible piece of information. And then when it's tangible, it helps with long-term memory, or however long something's important to you. Do you remember how long long-term memory is?
Nope.
Okay. So think about it, long-term memory. Can you remember your mother's face?
Yes.
Can you remember the first house or apartment that you ever lived in?
Yes.
Can you remember your first pet, if you had one?
Yes.
So that's long-term memory. So long-term memory is really forever. So that's really how our mind naturally learns. And then there's 3 parts to memory. So the 3 parts to memory are memorization, where you're taking the information in the first place. Then retention, where you're holding the information. And then recall, where you pull the information back up. So if you think of a cash register, it opens, you put in the money, it retains the money and holds it, and then you click the little button and then it opens, and then you get the money out of it. So the brain is really the same way. Now, there are some things that can interfere with taking in the information in the first place. So if you're not paying attention, if you're not present, if your mind is wandering, it's not going to go in. If you had a rough night, you didn't get enough sleep, that can affect it. If you're on a new medication and your body's kind of getting used to it, that could affect it. If you're upset about something and your mind's on something else, that can affect it. But in an ideal situation where you're present, where you're receptive, where you're open, where you're breathing, you can take in the information. Then you want to hold the information. And then the recall is the most important of all, because how many times do you know something and it's on the tip of your tongue and you just can't get it out? You're thinking of a word, you're thinking of somebody's name, like that. So the way
Thank God for Google, right?
oh my gosh, it's so helpful. It's so incredibly helpful. You're like, what was the name of that actor who was in that movie?
Yep.
What was that movie about the atomic bomb?
Yep.
Yeah, Google, there it is. There it is. So it's great. So the way this brain sprouts memory system was designed, and I didn't originate it. I learned it from a memory expert about 40 years ago. And then I was in grad school, so I was able to research these things to figure out, why is this memory system working so well? Why is it so powerful? And why is it easier than some of the other ones out there? And so then I bought the rights from it and improved upon it. And so here's how to do it. So you have one item on the left. So like on a piece of paper, you have one item on the left, another on the right, the way we're taught to read, going from left to right. You want to use an association method of linking, where you link the 2 items together by an action verb that end in ing, where the 2 items are physically interacting, like hugging, kissing, raining on. But if you had a dog barking at a cat, that would not make a good association because they're not touching. So you always want to make sure the 2 items are touching and interacting together, dancing with, eating, gravitating toward. And then once you see it in your mind's eye, and if you don't have a good visual recall, you can just draw little stick figures. And then over time of practice, then the ability to visualize will start to happen. I know this for myself because I didn't have good visual ability when I first started teaching and practicing the memory system. So I drew little stick figures. And then after a couple of months, then the ability to visualize started getting stronger and stronger. And after 8 months, I was dreaming in color, which I hadn't been doing before. My reading speed improved, my reading comprehension improved. All these things happened. And I realize now from the neural branching of the brain and all the rewiring, so to speak, of my brain capacity. So then the 4th part, the recall, is most important. So you ask the question, what's the item on the left doing? And then you re-see the answer. So if I had a dog and a cat and the dog was licking the cat, then you re-see that picture in your mind, the dog is licking the cat. And then you can kind of microscope into it. Imagine the color of the dog, the facial expression of the dog, the tongue of the dog, the little cat, the color of the cat, the eyes of the cat, the expression on the cat. And all this is really good practice for the brain. But when you re-see the picture, the synapse fires and releases more neurons. So an example of that, let's say the brain is a tree and a synapse, which is the message signal, is a squirrel, and the squirrel's jumping from tree branch to tree branch, sending little message signals, and you're getting the information. So if you have a brain injury or Alzheimer's or dementia or something, you've got tired squirrels and they're not able to make it to the next branch and get the nuts, so they die. But the memory system is kind of like bringing in the cavalry, and you're having squirrel after squirrel after squirrel, and so many squirrels, and they're jumping from tree branch to tree branch, and you're making more branches, and they're reaching higher and higher levels. And so that's really what's happening in the brain. So, for example, let me get a book. Let me break it down a little bit. So in chapter 2 of Love Remembers, there's now 3 Love Remembers books. So when people go to buy it, make sure they do Love Remembers by Vicki Mizel, Vicki, Mizel, Mizel. All right, so here we've got the, whoops, right here, the left to right. Whoops.
Yep.
The left to right, the action verb, physically touching, physically interacting, visualize, and then the recall, which is questions and answers. And then here we have a picture of a little dog and a kitty cat, and the dog is licking the kitty cat. And then what happens is then with the linking method, the dog disappears from the picture, then you have the cat. And let's say you have to go to the bank. So you can see the cat eating money. It could be playing with money. It could be shredding money. And then you re-see that picture. And then you just let it build upon itself. So usually you want to make a list of about 8 to 10 items. If you have to go to the grocery store and you have to buy you want apples and oranges and paper plates, then you could have the money eating an apple. The apple could be dancing with the oranges. The oranges could be rolling around the paper plate. And just the practice of linking and seeing and recalling those images, you're making these neural branches in the brain from the 10th to the 10th. That's what Carl Sagan said in his book called Dragons of Eden. He actually knew about this in the 1980s. He knew about regenerating the brain. So he said it's like building an architectural scaffold, and you're taking the 10 to the 10th. So if you're making 100,000 new neural branches to the 10th, that's like 1 million new neural branches. 1 million new neural branches to the 10th is 10 million. 10 million to the 10th. So you're literally making billions of neural branches when you're practicing the memory system. So if people want to know how to get the audio tapes, all that's on my website, brainsproutsmemory.com. And then I do private lessons and talking about doing webinars.
I also have a question from somebody from VM Nation. Their question is, how come I can listen to 1,000 songs, but they don't affect me, but I can listen to a song that was played at my mother's funeral and it brings me back to that moment?
Because we take information in, especially when there's an emotional affiliation with it, it stays. It actually encodes into the brain differently. And so that's why it can pull it up. Same thing with smells and good emotion and not good emotion. I have a dear friend who passed away last October. She was my closest friend that I'd had since childhood. I had two best friends growing up. One who lived in Chicago, which was Peggy, and we were camp friends together every summer. And then another friend, Stacy, that lived in Tulsa with me. And I stayed with them, still to this day. And when I talk to Peggy's kids, usually that within a couple of days, I'll have a dream about her, or the sadness will come back. The grief of the loss of her will come back. And, or the smell, if you smell pumpkin cooking, immediately you think of Halloween or Christmas or Thanksgiving. It just automatically comes back. That's part of our wiring. It's a good question.
Okay, so now one thing you mentioned earlier is visualization. And I'm a big, like I said, I love self-development. I love talking about mindset. And for me, if I look on my phone right now, you can't see it because of the filter, but I have the beach house that I want. I have the boat that I want, and I'll sit and at night and I picture myself walking around the house. I picture myself, sitting on the boat with my cousin, getting ready to take it out, and it's become real, and it's become very emotional. And I've also went out and walked around the lots where these boats are at, got on the boats, touched them, felt them. So talk about visualization for success and how that also helps build your neurons. Because I actually had a friend, he's like, so I think my friend said he wanted a Lamborghini. And he's like, well, why don't you have one? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, have you ever gone and sat in one, smelled the leather, touched it, took it on a ride? He's like, no. He's like, because that's when you're connecting, you're connecting different brain waves. So talk about visualization, but also talk about touching things and how that can also help stimulate the brain.
So thank you. Everybody has a different way of learning. Some people say, I see what you mean, or I feel you, or I hear what you're saying. And that's an indicative of their learning style oftentimes. So if somebody is, if they're better auditory listeners, they can listen to something and remember, or if they have to touch and do something and that helps them remember, or they just visualize it and see it happening. So I have a quick little story that helped bring home that point. I was visualizing that I wanted to live in this place in New York City in 1989. I'd moved to New York and I wanted to live in the Bromley. So I saw myself swimming in the Bromley. And then I met somebody who happened to live in the Bromley, and he wrote me down as a friend of his or a cousin of his. And I had swimming rights in the Bromley. And then I thought about it later and I thought, oh my gosh, that's all I did was visualize swimming. And that's what happened. But I didn't visualize living there, bringing home groceries there, making breakfast there, entertaining people there, walking the dog or bringing home the cat and the cat looking out the window of the Bromley. So I ended up not living in the Bromley, but I did have swimming rights. So that really taught me something. I had a relapse. Well, I actually, when I first got started with the memory program, after I was teaching kids in the classroom, I became a consultant teaching memory training. I was working with older adults. And then I wanted to get more business to help them underwrite education. So I started going to New York and working in businesses, IBM, customer service, sales, stuff like that. And I overworked. I worked too hard and I got really sick with something called the Epstein-Barr virus.
Yep.
And it's like having the flu all the time. You're hot, you're cold, brain fog, no energy. It was really, really scary. And I went to see a woman. I lived in San Diego at the time before I moved to New York. And I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, come on over. I'll give you a session. And she worked with me with either a green light or a yellow light to stimulate the immune system. And then she said, what do you want? And I said, well, I want to be better. I still want to move to New York. And she said, what do you want to see happen in New York? And I said, oh, I want to go to art openings. I want to be on stage. I really like acting. I want to have an apartment on the Upper West Side of New York. And so she said, well, draw the pictures of the end result of what you want to see happen. Use your memory system to link them together. Visualize them a couple of times every day and commit to it, totally commit to it, which meant I had to leave my beautiful condo in La Jolla, which now I wish I would have just leased it out instead of sold it. But I committed to it, and several months passed, and I was invited to a party in Los Angeles. Oh, and by the way, I wanted the apartment to be $500 a month in New York. So at night, I would lay in bed. I would send my energy, literally send my energy to the Upper West Side. I'd visualize writing checks out for $500 a month. I visualized being inside an art gallery where they were serving wine and cheese and chatting it up with people. I visualized being on stage and delivering a line and looking out in the audience and people were crying. So I literally would lay in bed and visualize all these things. And then I visualized health, visualized, Pac-Man eating up the Epstein-Barr cells and changing them to a flood of new cells that were vibrant and happy and alive and dancing. And so anyway, I get invited to this party and I walk in and a woman literally announces, she said, by the way, I have an apartment on the Upper West Side. My renters just sent me a letter that they're leaving. If I can rent it out immediately, sight unseen, I will rent it out. Otherwise, I'm giving up the apartment. And I went over to her and I said, I'm interested. I've been visualizing an apartment. I said, how much is it? She said, $500 a month. So I said, okay. And I sold some of my mother's jewelry. I got her the money. And then I flew to New York and stayed in the apartment and did some business in New York, came back and sold my condo in La Jolla and moved everything to New York. And I think it was March when I went and saw it after I'd already paid the rent. And May is when I ended up moving there. So, and then I ended up acting. And then that scene really happened where I delivered a line and I looked out in the audience and they were crying. And I did go to art openings. I did go to dance class and I did get my health back. I had a couple relapses of the Epstein-Barr until I swam with dolphins, which helped strengthen the immune system in my will. And then I found a doctor that I had known before named Dr. Timothy Binder, who made me this little tonic that for the Epstein-Barr and little white pills that I still take today because I have to watch my stress levels because the Epstein-Barr kind of stays in your system. But that's a powerful example of being able to get healing and being able to change my life using visual pictures.
Okay, so now let's for the last quarter, let's talk about because a lot of people, we talk about the patient, we talk about the victim, but we never talk about the caregivers. And for me, I realize, and I have an empty cup that I keep on my table, and I just keep it there. I've never drank out of it, but it's there to remind me that I can't pour from an empty cup. If my cup is empty, when I go see my mother tomorrow, I can't pour anything out if I'm not practicing self-care. So talk a little bit about, how to be a good caregiver, but also how to take care of ourselves so we can be a good caregiver.
Well, the number one thing is you want to have enough rest. You want to be rested, and you want to have good nutrition and good brain fuel for yourself and for your loved one, ideally, and exercise. So, rest, protein, nutrients, and exercise, and then a good mental state. So, an example, like I have a dementia patient that I see every week, and I teach her the memory system, a modified version of it. And oh, that's where I wanted to tell you about the caregiver talk that I gave, that I have on YouTube. It's called Tidbits for Alzheimer's by Vicki Mizel, Vickimizel. It's a 45-minute talk. It's the best talk I've ever given on this. I felt like God literally came through my brain and delivered it. And I gave it about 20 years ago, but I've never been able to do a better job than that. And so what you want to do is teach them a modified version of the memory system to help you and to help them. So, for example, if your mother or someone's asking the same question 60 times an hour, do you have an experience like that where she's asking you something and then she forgets and asks you again?
You mean like calls me every 5 minutes? You mean that?
Yeah. So you can let's say she wants to know when you're going to visit. So say, Mom, I want you to look at the clock. Let's say you're going to visit her at 3:00. So say, I want you to see the hands of the clock at 3:00. And then at 3:00, I want you to imagine I'm inside the clock and my arms are outstretched and I'm hugging you. So I want you to visualize that I'm hugging you with the clock at 3:00. And then have her actually visualize the hugging, have her imagine turning the hand of the clock to 3. The little hands of the clock are coming out, embracing her. Have her smell your cologne if you have any, or, the warmth of the feeling that you're taking her hand. Maybe you'll have a bite of food together, a little bit of yogurt or some fruit or something, and have her connect those images with the emotional feeling with the touch. And that will actually change the brain from 30-second recall to a longer term recall. And that would actually help. If you want to have her imagine you're coming on a Sunday, you could have her see a little sun on her pillow. And remember the vibrancy of the sun, the beauty of the sun, the warmth of the sun. You're her sun. You love her, the warmth of your love, and make those associations together and make that connection. And then with your mom, you could actually have her do maybe 3 little things of the memory system. So usually what I do is I get together with the woman, I talk to her, ask her what's going on or what she's thinking about or something new in the news, or I'll read to her from my book and we'll take some main ideas. So you want to start with yourself. And she loves peanut butter sandwiches and she loves puppies. So I'd say, okay, imagine you're petting the puppy and the puppy's jumping up on you and licking you and all happy to see you. And you're so happy to see the puppy. And now imagine the puppy is eating the crumbs left from your peanut butter sandwich. And she'll laugh and giggle and say, I can see that in my mind. And so it's actually making those little neural branches grow even in her mind as well. And then she likes to watch television. So then the peanut butter could turn on the TV and maybe there's a dog show on the TV. And just those 3 little things can stimulate the brain and give her a couple million new neural branches. And if you do that a couple of times while you're with her, it'll help stimulate and help her remember. And then it builds upon itself. And then it's stimulating for you too, because you're making those neural branches in your brain as well.
Okay, now what happens if somebody has a memory from them that just keeps popping up? Is there anything that and it's a bad memory, is there anything we can do to help alleviate the pain from a bad memory?
Yeah, there's a couple things that you can do with that. So, what you can do is you see that memory in your mind, you close your eyes, the terror or anxiety that maybe you feel in your body, you just kind of take a couple of deep breaths and then imagine yourself in something that's relaxing and beautiful. So for me, I think of ocean waves, sun and the ocean waves. So imagine the ocean waves just filling your body and pushing out that anxiety and discomfort with relaxation, warmth, a positive feeling, and then change the picture from whatever it is, whether it's an explosion or a lost limb or just a horrible image in their mind, and think of something sweet and friendly, whatever it is for them. Bambi, mother's touch, an embrace, a daughter or son giving them a hug. You superimpose that positive feeling of love and relaxation, and then you rehearse that particular image over and over and over again, like 100 times. And then when the bad feeling comes in, again, you try to dim it, make it smaller, then bring in that positive image, relaxation, goodness, love, warmth. And over time, it really will make a change.
All right. So, this is a teaching podcast, and a lot of our listeners are veterans, first responders. And like we talked about before we came on the show, there's up to, depending on the number and depending on how they rate it, there's up to 60 suicides a day in the veteran and first responder community. So if a veteran would come sit in front of you for the first time and say, Vicki, give me 3 things that I can start doing right now to start helping with my PTSD and my traumatic brain injury, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice?
Number 1 is sign a contract that you will not kill yourself. That's number 1. Number 2 is watch all my videos on YouTube. I've got free videos on YouTube of the memory training method so that they can start to get those neural branches growing and start to be able to change have more power in their brain. Besides memory training, what it does is it creates an electrical energy. So you're actually giving more energy to the brain along with these linking information and recall of the pictures. And the third thing is I would encourage either a form of meditation, like transcendental meditation, I think is one of the most powerful. There's a gentleman in New York City named Roger Bruce Lane that has a company called the Cosmos Tree, where he does meditation as well. There's all kinds of mindfulness stuff. Mindfulness is really good. It just doesn't go I'm more of a proponent for the deep meditation that goes into the alpha and delta states so that the whole body and the nervous system can heal. So those would be the 3 things. And then depending on their predisposition, people are having some significant improvement with the microdosing of mushrooms and ayahuasca. I do not recommend it if they have any history of mental illness or really severe psychosis. It's not a good idea, but and don't do it with a friend. Go under a medical doctor who's had years of experience, who's a trained therapist that can administer that. But really, I think just don't kill yourself. Get the memory system and meditation. Those two things combined together have been the thing that helped me the most, that's changed my brain and changed my life.
Okay,
And
so let me ask you why, because this is interesting. I've had, I think we're on 1,200 episodes now, and I've talked to doctors, psychologists, veterans, and I've never heard somebody say, sign a contract that you're not going to kill yourself. Talk to me about that, because that's very interesting, because I know once I put pen to paper, I'm going to do that thing. Or, because it's like anybody can put something on their phone, but once I write it in my journal, it becomes law. So talk to us about how important the signing of the contract is and where you came up with that.
I actually read a book. There's a woman, if you want to hang on a second, I think I have the book handy. Hold on. My mom used to say, if you think you want to commit suicide, go out and have a good dinner and go to bed, because then you can actually wake up the next day. But once you commit suicide, it's done. You're finished. And sometimes you don't commit suicide well. So you end up, in a really bad situation where you have kidney failure, or you're on dialysis, or it's worse than you were before. But here's a book. It's called The End Suicide and Homicide and the Harm in Between by Drina Fried. And in her book, she talks about, you literally write out and you make a contract that you will not commit suicide. And when you have that promise, and then you have a plan, meditation, there actually, transcendental meditation has been going, I know in New York, through the David Lynch Foundation. They raise money and they go in and they help vets. And it's been tremendously helpful in changing the brain and helping with depression and PTSD and those kinds of things. NLP, I don't know any present practitioners. I had it done for me about 40 years ago that really helped me. There are some new techniques called NET, which is neuro-emotional technique that helps with PTSD and anxiety. There's another one that starts with an E.
EMDR.
That's also pretty amazing. Really, really helpful. I've done all those for the car accidents that I've been in. And so when you don't kill yourself, there's hope. There's hope that things will change. And there's enough things out there right now, between the visualization and breathing and things to help PTSD, brain regeneration, that over time the healing can happen. The body really, really can heal. I mean, there are women that have been raped at knife point that have healed. Women who've lost babies who have healed. I've successfely healed tremendously from recovering from car accidents, Epstein-Barr. I had a horribly abusive boss that set me up and cost me my health and literally destroyed my life at one point. And those little neural branches, and I've been able to redesign my life again. So it's really possible. But once you're finished, you're finished. There is no waking up. And the problem with suicide, I mean, if somebody, let's say, has arthritis that's just like this, and every day they have to slowly undo it and go for a swim and take medication, and then by the evening they're all crippled up again, that is no life. So in that respect, if you're not going to get better, then administered, medically approved, okayed suicide is one thing, but that's one that you've contemplated, you've gotten the family's agreement with. If there's really no shot that you're going to get better. But when people are just like, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore, they stick a rope around them or they overdose, that's not the way to go. You leave too much damage to the survivors. Your kids are never the same, ever, 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 ever. They'll always feel guilty. They wish they would have turned left instead of turned right. They wish they would have said this or that. My mother passed away. She ended up crippled and she committed suicide. She did her best to try to help us and that it wouldn't be so awful, but it's awful. It's awful. And it's cost me. It's given me a problem with commitment. I never got married. I think that I've missed her every day of my life. It took me years to just have forgiveness in my heart. And I really loved her and I wanted her to stay. And but being crippled, she really didn't want to live. And I had to finally come to peace and acceptance that that would be not the way to live. But I always felt she could have recovered from that. But she was just too weak at that point. She was just too weak. So
now, and I believe that, when a person takes their own lives, they're just passing on their pain to somebody else. It's where at least, like you said, if you don't do it today, like somebody once told me, because I'm a recovering addict. I've been clean 35 years now. That
congratulations.
I can use any day, just not today. So I was like, I can kill myself any day. I just can't do it today. And I think if we take that mindset to realize, okay, like even the Bible says, this too shall pass. So, even if we're struggling today, just realize that, tomorrow will be a better day if we could just make it through today. And I can't wait. When I log off tonight, because I'm getting off about 6:00, I'm actually going to watch that video, that 45-minute video on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Tidbits for Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah, tidbits for Alzheimer's, something like that. And I want to add too, I had somebody say to me, I had a spiritual counselor who, when I was in Los Angeles and I lost my job due to this horrific ex-boss, and I said, I just don't feel like I want to be alive anymore. I just don't. And he said, promise me you will not commit suicide. Promise me you won't. And years before that, 20 years before that, when I was in the depths of Epstein-Barr, I did not see how I was going to ever get out of bed and work again and live again. I had a chiropractor and he said exactly what you said. You can always commit suicide. Why don't you wait at least till June? Promise me you'll wait till June. And I think it was Christmas time. And I felt alone. My dad wasn't in my life anymore. My mother had died. My brother was starting to be bipolar. I felt very alone. And I was sick with the Epstein-Barr. And he said, wait till June and see how you feel. And then I brightened and I got the homeopathic remedy and swam with the dolphins. In June, I went to see him. I said, I'm happy I'm alive. I'm good. Yeah. So go ahead with what you were going to say.
So how do we find your books? How do we find your videos? How do we get in touch with you? And how do we support your mission?
All right. Well, the very best way is go to Brain Sprouts. That's plural, BrainSprouts, brainssprouts, brainssproutsmemory.com. 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 I have 2 videos that I put up that you'll get immediately, and then go down to the bottom, and I've got a free little free sheet on how to remember names. Fill that form so I can get your contact information. Sign up on my Cadley for a phone call. I give a 30-minute free consultation, and then I can talk to you more. And then the way to get my audio, I have MP3s or CDs on the entire memory program. It's 12 lessons. It's 3.5 hours. It's fabulous. And that's on brainsproutsmemory.com if you go to shop or products. If you go to VickiMizel.com, memory lessons, about 5 memory lessons come up on YouTube. And those are the best ways to reach me. So the website, get on a call, watch the YouTube videos, because I talk a lot about the beginning of how I got started with memory training with kids. And then I talk about the things that you can do for yourself, and as a caregiver, what you can do for yourself and your loved one. So those are the top 2 videos that come right up when you go to brainsproutsmemory.com. And then if anyone wants privates, then I have privates available. I have a 10-session memory training, and it includes the book. Oh, the book you can get on Amazon.com. Love Remembers by Vicki Mizel. There's 2 other Love Remembers now since I published my book. If anyone's interested in my other book, How I Saved My Brother's Life from COVID, if anyone's struggling from long COVID, it's called A Sister's Love, also by Vicki Mizel. And then on my website, I also have consulting that I can teach you the memory system. You in turn can teach it to your loved one. So I have a caregiver program and a long COVID program. So I invite everybody to check me out. If it feels aligned with your mission, then give me a call and we'll talk about it and see what we can do to help you. Because it's in my heart, it's in my DNA. That's all I really want to do, is help people to learn this method and how they can recover from anything, or help their loved one, or help themselves. It's helped me. I don't have dementia or Alzheimer's, and it runs in my family. And I think it's because I have so much neural foliage in my brain, and I've been teaching this now since my 20s, that I think I averted a potential fate. That thank God, knock on wood, I'm in good shape in my 60s, where my mom's family, my grandmother and my uncle, were already in nursing homes at this point.
And I got to say, guys, make sure you check out her Facebook. And she's also very active on LinkedIn. I love her LinkedIn profile. So make sure you go to LinkedIn.
Oh, thank you.
And Angel, I just want to say thank you for getting us together. And Vicki, I just want to say thank you so much. And like I said, your book has really helped me and touched my heart. So I just want to say thank you for writing that, because I think you wrote that just for me.
I'm glad you feel that way. I did. I wrote it just for you and all the people who are struggling and suffering. And even if you aren't suffering, memory training is good for not just the memory, but for the readiness of the mind. That's what Aristotle said. So 400 BC, they were using that. Today's Aristotle gave me the baton, I feel like, and I've got the modern version of the memory system.
I love it. And guys, remember, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and he always says, you can be a victim or you can be a victor. And if you guys are watching this show, you guys are victors of your present and your future. And I appreciate you guys. Vicki, have an amazing week. Keep putting out amazing content. And I think I'm going to pick up the other book about the COVID, because that's pretty interesting. And so I might pick up that book next.
Okay, that's great. I love that. All right, I'd love to stay in touch. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and thank you for making it so I could teach and offer as much as I possibly could in the time that we had. Thank you so much.
Well, have a great week.
I will. You too. Thank you.